Hello, everyone, and welcome to our regular live YouTube from our Radiate family. I'm Dr. Judy.
And I'm Young.
I'm Scott.
I'm John.
And today we don't have Vivian today, so we'll go with that. And what's the topic today? It's forgiveness practice. So,
Yes. And so I'll just kind of read from our Facebook there. There's oftentimes we come across hurting other people, or we don't even know that we hurt them. And it could cause pain to others. And we may go about our day and not know that and realize that, but it affected their lives. So within ourselves, low vibrational energy that blocks our soul energetically, these block energies may arise at some point in our life as it grow inside of us if left unchecked. When a blocked energy is expressed, it may take shape in the form of anger, resentment, fear, hate, low self-esteem, and others. Every time these energies are acted out, it becomes counterproductive and present challenges in our lives. That is why the act of forgiveness provides us a means of removing these energetic blockages. Here in the show, we will talk about forgiveness practice, and we'll show how they can help us remove blockages so that we can move smoothly into our lives with ease. So we're gonna just kind of have our group consensus of about their experience in forgiveness, what it means to each and every one of us on that topic. For me, really, forgiveness is like I stated earlier. There are times that I would not realize that I may have done something that caused people. They may take it the wrong way or assume that I may appear to be hard to approach, or maybe the word stuck up, or, and intentionally, I probably would not recognize that that is what I was doing. But the way that my persona comes out, it may be affected somebody who had already have a low self-esteem and it's harder to approach. Or, as a kid, we get into fights for little silly reasons because we didn't know better. And so we may have hurt someone. Like, I know as a little girl, we would cause fight not knowing that that is the wrong thing to do. And so as we grow older, we realize, looking at another person and realizing that the more wisdom that we gain, the more that realize that when we hurt other people, we actually hurt ourselves. And so learning about forgiveness is an important aspect of our soul growth. So that's my perspective of forgiveness, like recognizing the things, even whether it's small or big, that we can have an impact in someone's life big time and not even realize it. So if we can understand that that has an impact and how we can change ourselves, that would make us become a better person.
Yeah, and I would say to that, it's the act of like forgiveness of not hurting other people. But in my kind of like upbringing and the environment that I grew up in, the family dynamics, it takes the mentality of like growing up to get to a point where you realize it's not about everything revolves about you, and then when you reach to a level of mental maturity, then you can kind of see that you may potentially hurting other people. But as a kid, even as a kid, everything's directed to you, especially these days with the media. Everything's, quick and, you get like quick gratification, right? So, and even back in like the 80s, all the way through the 90s, just, well, I kind of give away my age already, yeah. But yeah, just being with other kids. There's bullies, right? You could be a bully too. I've played both roles, being bullied and also becoming the bully at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like you're kind of getting other people, and then other people are bullying you, or at least to me, and then I take it all in. And when that happens, I kind of put that upon other people, and not knowing it. And that's like one example. The other is like if someone does something, even so subtle, like even your siblings or people close around you, your cousins, or just little things that they may not see, but you take it internally.
Mm-hmm.
And then in your psyche throughout your whole entire lifetime, it comes back, and there's these like reminders like, oh, that person did that to me. That
Mm-hmm.
person did that to me. And it just
You're starting to hold grudges, huh?
Right, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes up so much thought process, and it tires you out. But then you keep going at it again. It's like a drug, really.
Yeah, all your energy is focusing on that.
So to the point where it's actually affecting your life. For me, it affected my life because I developed more anger to the point where, it's really spontaneous when it snaps. It's just like I become a different person. And that's where, you have, anger management and these other things to help it. But it doesn't really help unless you actually physically take the initiative, and to actually work within yourself and to process all of this. And that takes time. It takes, understanding of yourself, who you are, and then just your environment and where you want to be, where you want to see yourself in the future, what you want to become. So I didn't want to become that person, especially when I had my son. Just the dynamics early on at age 2, I just didn't. It actually changed me. So there's a saying like, your son, your kids. Once you have kids, it changed your life. It really did with me. Mm-hmm. I see that already, and I didn't want to have that type of relationship with my son. So, looking out, reading a lot of material, seeing what's out there, diving into spirituality, then it all comes down to, what's the pattern that I see that keeps nudging on my brain and my psyche, that triggers my anger without knowing. So I find the pattern, and eventually it's rooted into forgiveness, really. I see the pattern, what brought the anger. And it's really, I'm sure everyone has it, like you either have some social thing that causes you to create a certain problem. Well, for me, it's like with the family dynamics, right? So I grew up without a father figure, and then, my siblings end up taking care of me early on. So there's that parenthood, that separation anxiety, I guess, that kind of dig into you. And for some people, they express it, and some people, they take it all in. So for me, I took it all in, and then it just lingered there over time. So the act of going through that, processing all those memories that are like kind of blocked in your consciousness, so kind of like going into your subconsciousness and pulling it all out, and then just making it aware and present, and then just doing a lot of forgiveness for yourself and for the people that hurt you. And then from that, I just naturally changed. And it takes time, but I noticed the relationship with my son. It's improved the dynamics between him and I, our relationship so much better. And here I am with this awesome group of people that are working to help other people. And through my own experience, I'm hoping that people can see that there is a way to get out of these patterns. And by getting out of it too, you really improve your life, because everything's just much better. Positivity, your relationship with your workplace, family, you have less thoughts of these type of things nudging your psyche, and more time to think about the future, planning for a better life for yourself and your family and people around you. So that's kind of like as we can talk more about the forgiveness, but I'll pass it over to, John and Scott on this take too. So we got some quietness here.
Well, I kind of started early. When I was younger, my mother, anytime I said something that wasn't right or I behaved a certain way, she said, "Now forgive."
Mm.
And she kept saying that. She kept saying, if you do something negative, always ask forgiveness. If someone does something to you, always ask forgiveness.
Mm.
And you just say, forgive that action. Forgive what you just said. And so I got into the habit of basically doing forgiveness, at least as a child. I did it a lot. Who didn't?
That's awesome.
But my brain started going, my brain started going, oh, okay, when we do something negative, we need to forgive. And I have noticed that now it does it automatically almost. So if you start young in forgiveness, people forget our brain is more than just there to think. It actually does a lot. It runs a lot of who we are. And once it learns something, it learns it and it does it automatically. And there are times that like I get mad at someone who just cut me off in a car and I yell something not nice. And all of a sudden I hear in the back of my head the forgiveness of that person and forgiving my outburst and forgiving the reason that caused them to do that. And it's like, okay. And sometimes I don't pay attention to it, but lately I've been paying attention to it. And it's like, I'm hearing what my brain is saying. So it's like, you can start it now, and who knows, your brain might pick it up really quickly.
Yeah,
but if you start your children out early.
Yeah, I think what you're bringing point.
Your children out early.
You're cutting out there a little bit, John.
Go ahead.
But I was saying that you're bringing up a good point about like repeating, like trying to train your brain to get into that motion of like forgiveness, just to activate. So that way when these things kind of bother you, you kind of like just have a way to kind of brush it off or like to dissipate that type of energy, so it doesn't dig into your core. I find that really important, and it has helped with my my forgiveness practice as well.
Well, like I said, if you've got children, you start your children young doing that, it's going to automatically start being placed in their brain. This is something that I need to do regularly.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying rely on your brain all the time, because you do still need to do every once in a while. You need to do a physical one. You need to say every once in a while, because it's like a loop recorder in your brain. Sometimes it will shut off for a moment or two, and you have to remind it, oh, we got to keep this going.
Yeah.
And so that is, I mean, when I would be bullied by the kids at school, I never let it faze me, because it's like, it's like I'd take it as a compliment, and they wouldn't know what to do. And my brain had already forgiven them for being so mean to me. But I wound up with a reputation early on as the strange kid. And I accept that with full honors.
That takes a lot of power, personal power, to own that, to know that, regardless of what other people are doing to you, you hold the light for them, because you understand that their action is because they didn't know better, and that you hold that light to embrace that and to guide them, that, oh, now they're looking at you as like, maybe it's not such a good idea to bully John anymore, because he's so sweet. He's so nice. I mean, no matter what we're doing to him, he's still have that.
Oh, I was obnoxious. I was obnoxious, but yeah. But the kids learned quickly that it didn't faze me, and the reason it didn't faze me was because, one, my mental train of thought was already forgiving them for their actions, and because it was forgiving them for their actions, it stopped me from reacting.
That's really good.
That's like, what is it like? If you kick somebody and then they don't react, then you want to kick them some more to get the reaction, but until they say stop it, and you're like, okay, well, I won't kick you anymore. That's kind of like the mentality of I would say a bully, I guess. They keep doing it until
get them to cry.
Yeah.
I had a kid that would push me all the time. And one time he pushed me right into a glass window.
Jeez.
Oh, wow.
And I turned around and I looked at him and I said, "You really don't love yourself." And I stopped myself. I said, "But I understand why you're doing this and I forgive you." His head went womp back real fast and he's like, "You what?" I said, "You're upset at someone else and you're taking it out on the first person that you know that won't fight back."
Wow.
And I smiled at him and said, "Have a nice day," and walked on.
Oh.
He became one of my best friends in school. Because it was a reality check to him that I knew what he was venting wasn't on me, it was on someone else.
Yeah. And that usually is the case too, is that people tend to, like Jung was saying early on, we carry on these emotions and it's hidden, and then it will manifest somewhere else. And like you said, and then for you to say, I recognize your anger, I understand why you're taking it on me, and I forgive you. I mean, for you to have your mom at an early age teaching you this wisdom, that's powerful. And for you to pass on that wisdom to another kid.
I mean, imagine an adult saying something to another adult. It takes a lot of courage, so hats off to you.
My mom had to learn the hard way, and mainly because of her family. My grandmother was very judgmental, and my mother was a very independent person. My grandmother's always had the thought, "Oh, you wait for the man to do it. That's what the man is for." My mom got out in the middle of a pouring rain storm in a dress and changed the tire while my grandmother and my aunt sat in the back holding their purses like a dainty little girl. And so my mom has had to learn how to forgive my grandmother's actions, and knowing that she couldn't just say, I forgive you for this to my grandmother, because my grandmother would never understood it. My mom would just say after she left, "I forgive her for her actions. I forgive her for her comments." And usually it's right after she steps outside the door of my grandmother's house that she does this. So
that's good. She doesn't have to carry resentment towards your grandmother, and her heart is not aching, with revenge or with anger or even low self-esteem. So that's a very powerful wisdom to have that she's practicing.
So like in my mind, like there's like seems like two approach that's pretty effective. At least the ones I've tried. One that John has mentioned, like just keep repeating it. Then eventually things don't bother you, and then you just move, and you can move on with your life, and someone try to attack you verbally, it doesn't bother you. You don't pull that energy in. It doesn't bug you for a long duration of time. And that seems like it's kind of like training your mind. And you know how like kind of like propaganda, if somebody keeps telling you something over and over again, it becomes true. You start believing it. So now you keep saying forgiving. You start, your body, energetically, your spirituality, all those starting to integrate, and then it doesn't, you have this kind of like shield around you. The way I approach it, the other one is really trying to, if you don't have that practice, let's say like if you don't have that early on as a discipline to do that type of practice, the approach that worked for me is to really integrate. Well, I wouldn't say integrate, but really find the heart, go into the heart. And what I mean by that is go into the root of that. Look at that person that hurt you, or a situation, and assess that, analyze it, look at what went wrong, and then look at that person, and then if that person hurts you, per se, look at how that person became that person, and why they did that, right? So it could be something that they carry on because they're hurt by someone else. And you can, when you see that, and if you look at them as a kid, as a child, the compassion, most, I would say most humans, when you see babies and kids, they're adorable. So you don't have that prejudice. So if you look at them as a kid and how they brought up, you can see, they're just a human being. They're hurt as well. And from that stage, you can develop compassion for them. An example, if you have a situation with your dad, he left you early, or there's an abusive relationship, you can find how that brought about, how he became that person, and look at his situation at his time. Well, for my well, I'd say for an example, when I had problems with my dad when he came into my life, we had a rough time, but looking at him where he was brought up during the era of Vietnam War, the situation there, broken families due to the war and stuff, you put yourself in there, it's really tough. And when you go even further, what he had to live through is much harder than what I ever had to endure here. So you look at that kind of thing, and then you see the compassion, and then that's when you look at the heart, and then you see yourself where you're hurt too, and then you kind of do that. And that actually developed, in my mind, like, that's what real forgiveness is, when you can actually bring the compassion in. And then once you see the results, and you see the improvement, and then the discipline, in my mind, will come, because you're excited about it, it's effective, and it works for you, and you want to try it more. That's kind of like my take on the process of it, at least for me.
Definitely. How about your take from all of this, Scott?
Well, I like what you guys have been talking about, and for me, forgiveness is, even though we make it a very complicated subject, it's really got so much simplicity. Forgiveness is really about just letting go of that thing that's not resonating right with you, whether it's in yourself, and that's usually where the core of the problem is, before those issues, find themselves in your behavior, that you're asking for forgiveness from others. But for me, forgiveness is really just finding that part of you that's bubbling up, that doesn't need to be there, that really isn't a part of you, that like you guys were mentioning, just to repeat it and over and have processes to work with it. I like to use techniques like the emotional freedom technique for when these things start to bubble up. You find them coming up, and you can begin a process of letting them go by using points on your body and talking it through. Changes the the way that your left and your right brain works. So you can start to do affirmations, and your affirmations have a lot more power when you're more aligned, and you can do them that way. I don't know. What's your take?
That's really good in that aspect that you're sharing it, just letting go. But there is another aspect of our soul that we carry some of our previous life lesson into this lifetime that our soul wants to make amends. And sometimes we don't recognize that as part of our forgiveness practice. So these behavior, these actions shows up and we didn't really recognize it. But by doing the forgiveness practice, it truly helps unfold those past life.
It's nice when we're working on forgiveness to work on the patterns of forgiveness that relate to our ancestors.
Yes.
How much is that connected to us?
Mm-hmm.
And how are we going to break those chains unless we work so hard now?
Yeah.
Break those chains. But we start to see the patterns. The patterns come up and go, oh, this feels familiar. This is not what I want again. So it's a time for us to break the chains.
Yes, and I think the power of it is, like everyone's been saying, is starting early, but recognizing that that's not something that you want to have by holding in grudges, and just letting it go. And the most important thing is recognizing that, okay, that's not what I want to present myself to be. So how can I become better? And by bringing in the love and the light, we can actually be a shining example.
There comes the change. Change will begin to occur.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you brought up a good technique, that EFT. I've seen that around a lot, and it's what is it, emotional? What does it stand for again?
Freedom technique.
Freedom technique.
Emotional freedom technique.
Can you kind of like explain more about that for the viewer?
Well, yeah. The core concept behind it is our subconscious beliefs, as they start to process and bubble up into our consciousness. It creates an energetic field in the body. So it's a technique where you're actually treating the energy fields in the body as you talk through the emotion that's presenting itself or that you want to work on at the time. So it uses Chinese acupressure points, and you talk through your issues. So it's like, even though I have this problem with, and fill in the blank as you work the acupressure points. So for example, on your face, you'd work this point, and I'm double tapping, not to be confused with anything in the zombie movie. But I'm tapping right here where my eyebrows are, right here off the side of my eyes, directly under my eyes, right under the nose, and right under the lip, for example. Probably can't see it too good, but there's a point on the clavicle. And then there's a point that we like to get right here, spleen point. So, for example, you tap through those as you discover what you want to work on. What's that emotion that's so intense that it's interfering with your life because it creates a buzz or a disturbance. They use the illustration of talking about an old-time television. So I'm talking to the older people in the audience. I grew up with a television that was big, had a round screen, and this is when we got fancy color. The screen was round, we had rabbit ears on it.
It had dial knobs.
Yeah, and we would sit down across the room, no remote. I was the remote. There were only 3 channels. Scott, try channel 2. But as we would watch the TV, it would start to get a distortion. And of course, you would run up and you'd get close to the TV and start to move the rabbit around. And it got to the point where the TV would start to act up, and you just stand up and look at it, and it would behave. Or you walk up to it and you just come up to the side of the TV and you tap it. You know, you just kind of tapping it like that. And I think our body and the way that we receive the signal, you know, we're kind of electrical and kind of physical, very much the same way. So when an emotion is strong, it comes in and it just makes such a disturbance, fills us so full of doubt and everything that we need to do to progress, that we need a tool to work with it. So the way that it works is you tap on those points as you talk about the issue that you're having. They have a discovery statement that in the discovery statement you say, even though I have this problem, and it could be, even though I have this problem, I've been acting like a bully, you know, with the people while I was eating lunch.
Mm.
So I'm discovering that. Why was I being so bossy or this or that? And what's my issue with that? So you just start to tap on yourself and you say, even though I have this problem with being, you know, rude to somebody or being a bully, and then you say, but despite that problem, I love and accept myself as I am, something to that respect. So it really triggers your body in an unusual way that it's starting to process that. And then we kind of shortcut. We kind of walk through the rest of them, you know, with whatever your problem is. And then as we wrap it up, I like to come up to the crown of the head, the very top of the head, and then we begin a positive affirmation. So it's kind of it's got a process where you work on uh, really cleansing and working on the letting go, and then it's got another process where you step up and you start to build it. You give it that new information. But there's something about working the body in addition to just saying it that really makes a strong effect. And then what you do is you just rate it on a 1 to 10 scale. You know, how intense was this issue, this problem, this fear before I began the process, and what does it feel like now? And usually it goes from like a 10 to down to a real reasonable level.
Wow. Sounds like you're very familiar with this technique. How long have you been doing it for?
Well, my process of studying this one came from one of my dear clients. And she came walking into my office here one day and she goes, Scott, I want you to learn this technique. And she hands me a stack of CDs that was a 4-day seminar of emotional freedom technique. And I sat down and I started working through that and listening to everything they had to say. And I told her that I was ready to work on it. But she brought me another stack, another 4-day seminar, and then another 4-day seminar. So I sat there and I just studied all those seminars and started to apply it in my work. And but basically it came from that, came from some of the earlier, oh man, this is many years ago now.
So like you've been doing this for many years then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What would you say, like 10 years? I don't know. Like something like that.
Well, here's what I learned about that technique. Not to, and I like to look at this with any technique that you're learning,
Mm-hmm.
is if you can understand the principles of why it's working and then look at the mechanics of it, and you'll find out that the mechanics of it would work with other tools.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, we bring up the thing that you want to work on, come up with that discovery statement, and you could tap on your acupressure points, but you could also do an up treatment, or you could work with a crystal, or you could work with a magnet, or you could just do something that's like tapping that TV to come up and have an effect on it because it responds rather quickly. And it kind of starts to pull itself in order. And all of a sudden you feel that tension and that worry of whatever it was that you were trying to make an improvement on. You can just literally feel it being lifted up.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is recognizing the issues that we are working on. Let's say, you know, I have a patient who suffered, the outcome would be cancer. And she didn't realize that her cancer was an emotion that she had buried deep down from her ex, you know, family, their in-laws, all that emotion that she couldn't express outward. And it took her years later to now recognize that, oh my gosh, you know, it was that emotional resentment, that emotional anger that you couldn't express outward. It literally was turned or manifesting to a disease. And when she overcome that cancer and she start going through therapy and then realize how life continued to be challenged, but when she walked in the path of spirituality, she begins to see that the grudges and the anger and the resentment that she was holding was not serving her soul, nor was it serving her ex either. So she learned to forgive herself for being angry, but also forgive her ex for hurting her and her ex family. You know, so I think that's very important to learn to recognize what is it. And I like to, you know, bring out there's this amazing book by Carol Truman, talks about feelings, buried alive, never dies. She researched over 10 years of research following people and different diseases. And most of the diseases that manifested in physical form is from emotions. Mm-hmm. And learning to recognize the emotional aspect that is affecting us is key. And I think that's why the forgiveness practice is so powerful, you know, and why it's such an important practice to do, because it really free our soul from the burden that we have to live with, you know, and the tools that we can use is abundance. If we know, first of all, recognizing what is it that we want to work with, like Scott was saying, with the emotional freedom technique. Are you bitter? Are you angry? Are you jealous? Are you, you know, and then rate yourself on a scale 1 to 10. Where is that emotion before you start this technique? And then after you doing it, where is it now? And if it's coming down, continue doing it, because it will only help you better, right? For me, I've really just go into a prayer. First of all, recognizing what is it, like you were saying, Jung, the anger issue. You know, I didn't realize that I have an anger issue because I was buried in, but then after having children and then having a special need, the challenges, the burden, and then all of a sudden that emotion manifested, because as a child, I went through the war, and then I hated the Khmer Rouge, like I want nothing to do with them because of, you know, the bad thing that they did to their people. So as a little girl, you was like, why would another person have such a, you know, cold-heartedness to murder other people? So, and I didn't realize that I buried that within me. But then also, you know, coming from a Asian culture, you know, parents being strict, and, you know, with my parents, it's a different mentality of growing up. And so all that emotion manifested, and then I realized, wow. And by walking into the spiritual side, you realize that the reason that certain people act or react is because they didn't really have the knowledge or the wisdom to respond in a loving way. So when we have that ability and that wisdom to recognize, oh, that person responded that way, is because their soul hasn't really recognized their own action and reaction or behavior. And so by forgiving them, you're also forgiving yourself, because you're now focusing your attention on something more beautiful instead of like, oh my God, I wish I could take revenge on that person. Right?
Yeah, and it's like all this stuff that we're talking about brings up a really good point. Another point that I want to bring up is that, like the energy that we bury down, it's a low vibrational energy, and when it stays in you,
yeah,
a
lot of darkness.
Right, you have the relationship with the mind, the body, and the spirit. They're all interrelated. So if one's off balance, it's going to affect the other. So in this case, if the emotion is of like very low vibration, like anger, resentment, and you carry that with you, it's gonna manifest it through the body. So like the example that Dr. Judy was talking about with her patient having cancer, that's very real. I've seen that around my family, my extended families too. That when they start going through their own ways of forgiveness, whether it be through meditation, through practices, through working compassionately, or through even prayer. Even like this is beyond religion. Like it could be, any religion, but just the act of prayer itself, it's effective too. So if that's the route that it helps the person, by all means, because prayer is very, you're asking the divine light itself, the energy of the universe, whether it's God or whatever term you want to put on it. But you're bringing that energy into yourself. When your body is of low vibration, it's going to elevate your body, your energy, your energetic energy to a higher state. And with that, over time, the body would actually manifest and clear out these illnesses. Of course, you don't want to forget going to, the doctor and stuff like that too. But these are spiritual practices that you can work within that are, it's free. It doesn't cost anything.
Yes, some little tidbits of self-help.
Yeah. And for our group, our approach is with Radiate Up is when we host a workshop, we focus on the body first, because oftentimes when the emotion comes in, it affects the body, and then you carry that with you. Your posture is going to be out of line, and with that, it's going to affect your energy. And then it's just the whole thing. Everything is just going to drop. So your energy is down. You're going to be more bothered, agitated. Your spiritual level is going to be down. You're going to be more in pain. So you're going to think more about your pain. Then you're going to build up more resentment, hate, and anger. You're going to have more time to think about, non-positive things. So with the approach that we go with is what Scott has been doing, which is teaching the up technique, the Radiate Up technique, which corrects the body, it realigns the body, gets you back in good shape. And then from that, energetically, it also does the energetically too, because when your body is in good shape, your mind and spirit will also elevate as well. And that gives you an opportunity to work on yourself, do forgiveness practices. And from there, you can even elevate. So like, John has been doing forgiveness practice since he was a kid, and he's very psychic now. He's very in tune with the earth, the spirit realm. He can see things that people cannot see. And this is available for everyone, So when you do the spiritual side forgiveness practices, you're not only helping your body, you're helping your life, improving your life, the people around you, but you're actually opening doors to the spiritual realm. You're connecting, you're able to allow to open the door to connect more to your higher self, connect to spirits, angels, God, and just receive guidance and, learning more of yourself and the purpose of why you're here. Everyone wants to know
correct. That. You are right, Jung, and I wasn't laughing. I was laughing at John's cat.
I know his cat.
John's cat want to be a part of the show.
No, that's her way of doing her forgiveness. She has a really big butt earlier while I was cleaning. So this is her way of
I think she's like,
forgiving.
oh, you guys talking about forgiveness? Let me become a part of it. Was she the one that stomped on your toe all the time?
Yeah, she wants to hear.
She's the one who likes to springboard off of me, yes, when they're playing tag. And they kept getting into the trash bag that I hadn't thrown away yet, that I was putting trash in today, putting it all over the floor again.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
that was funny. Earlier she got on your face right in the side.
No, but I just want to come back to what you were saying, Jung. It's important that you know, take care of this vehicle that we have here. We are so blessed. I was talking to a patient of mine today, and that subject again, coming back to the forgiveness practice of letting go. And then when we recognize that we no longer hold all that burden, we are very light. But as the body structure, we got to align it so it allow our higher aspect to connect with us better. But the spiritual realm loves that, because it's saying that we have gained wisdom. You know, our soul have gained wisdom, and therefore we're able to connect to our higher aspect even more. And you can hear the messages a lot clearer. Where when our mind is so bombarded with anger, with resentment, with grief, with whatever, jealousy, it really just like our heart feels heavy, our body feels achy, our mind is clouded, we can't really think clear, we can't do anything, because it's that cycle that keeps over and over again. But when we understand it and we work on it, not just the physical body, but also the mental and then the spiritual, by doing that forgiveness practice, it really liberates us. And that's when we become more radiant from the inside out.
You radiate out.
Yeah. You just radiate up. Yes. With Scott's help, we will radiate up.
Yeah. I know Scott's been doing this for a while too, so he also like offers, you know, emotional freedom technique to others who are also interested in. Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to point out that, you know, a lot of these things is through our own experiences, and it's hard to quantify. It's hard to make, you know, is that real? Is that a fact? You know? But what Scott brought up is that it comes to how you feel at the end of the day, right? So you can quantify that. You can put that a number. You can equate that with a number, and even graph it, chart it over time, and see if it works for you or not. I mean, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty of, like, you know, what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Like scientific process, right?
Scientific data.
Yeah, and then you can see it yourself.
It's sure all for everything, but it's sure a valuable tool. And,
yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things we're about is trying to find ways to help people make the progress that we're looking to make right now.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing is, like, I know in the political world right now we're in.
You're not going to talk politics, are you?
I am.
No politics. No politics.
I'm bringing it to the table today. Not so much, but, you know, like, there's a lot going on. You know, there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of propaganda, both through your mass media, through Facebook, through, you know, you got it everywhere. You know, you don't know what's right or not, but
we're divided.
Yeah.
It's engineered and thrown at us.
Right. Yeah, and it stirs a lot of anger, and then all it is they're trying to get you to manipulate your emotion.
Never going to change anybody's mind anyway.
Yeah. So you see all these stuff, and it's just a good reminder that this is the time when you see these things, look into your feelings and see how, are you triggered by this? Are you triggered by what the president is saying today or tweeted today? Are you triggered by, you know, Russian propaganda or what's going on with Hollywood?
Yeah, a lot of people don't really take the time to really listen and understand themselves. They just react. And it's funny how, you know, we are so bombarded with all these stressor that we forget to really take a step back and really just ask ourselves, who are we and what is our purpose? You know, are we here to create more chaos, or are we here to create more solution?
Yeah.
Can we find the solution to this chaos? Because if we're here to be a part of the solution, then we shouldn't react to what we are being bombarded by. And that's where this forgiveness practice really helps on a day-to-day basis, because it helps our soul dig deeper into ourselves of really who we are, what we are all about, and help us really understand our soul purpose more.
Right. And I would say for the younger viewers, you know, they're in a time where there's a lot of technologies. Everything is kind of free. And those also, what's free is not so free. Everything comes with a price. So those are trying to get your information, your emotions, to do something. So it's always good to kind of take a step back and assess what's going on around you, what information is feeding to you, and see where your emotional lies. Do you really have investment in this person's tweet? And if you do, maybe you should find out why that emotion, or why you're so invested and triggered by that. Because I would guarantee you 10 years from now, would you come back and if I asked you the same thing, like, did that trigger you? You wouldn't even remember that very day.
Did it even matter? Yeah.
So it's kind of like, if you're triggered all the time, it affects your psyche, affects your emotion, your physicality, affects your growth.
Yeah.
So you become, I would say, almost a complainer or reactive. And then when you go in the workforce, these are not the type of people that companies want to hire. They want to hire leaders. They want to hire people who can solve problems. If you have a problem, how do you solve it? Yeah. Can you bring me with a solution? If you bring me problems all the time, they don't want that type of, person. Yes. So it's always good. It's not just spiritual, but it helps you through your career, helps you with relationships, people around you, and you just become a better person. Who doesn't want to hang out with a better person, Look at Keanu Reeves. He's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody wants to hang out with him,
Yeah. He's so down to earth.
Yeah, so in tune. Yeah.
Yeah, humble. And in order to have that humbleness, again, recognizing that we are all one, we are a mere reflection of each other. So when we understand what is it that we are here to do, we are here to bring solutions, we are here to solve the problem, we are here to assist and help disperse or bring love, then the perspective is different. It's more of like, how can I help you ease your pain? How can I help you move through your struggle, instead of, the other energy of, yeah.
And I would probably take it as far as, once you continue to do forgiveness practice, you become more authentic to yourself. You know who you are. You want to know what direction you want to go to. Things don't scare you as much. You can speak
with confidence
to other people, and then maybe like a whole concert full of people, or through the internet, or through wherever. You're not scared anymore, because you know that whoever hurts you or called you out or leave a comment on your YouTube, it doesn't bother you anymore. You're already automatically doing forgiveness practice, and you move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you let go of all that darkness.
Yeah.
With light.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let it shine.
It's
something that we kind of touched on, that I'd like to touch on a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah.
Is sometimes the negativity is not just yours.
Yeah.
We carry our ancestors negative with us. So even if you don't think you've done anything negative, it may not be you. And so it's best to even forgive for your ancestors. It's like, I still do forgiveness on my grandmother regularly. because she affected me, and I passed it on down. I to all my ancestors. I forgive them for anything negative they've done or anything negative been done to them. And it's helpful because you can still pick up and carry something from your ancestors, that if you don't forgive it and don't clear it up, it's going to go to your children.
So, John, the first time that I heard that concept, you know, to forgive and forgive your ancestors, I just want to say to everybody, try it and see how you feel. And if you're like me, it's like, wow, that feels so good. Just constantly being reminded of myself to do that, forgive the ancestors. And it really lightens up and changes everything immensely, very quickly. So just challenge people to try that and see how that feels.
I do usually, yeah.
You're thinking, well, I'm not responsible for that. That has nothing to do with me. Just stop that and give it a
You're not responsible, but you're the carrier, and you're going to carry it to your children.
See how you feel. It's pretty amazing. Thank you.
It's good that you brought up that too. That we're up in the hours already, but before we finish, I wanted to add one more, is that sometimes when people are really negative, you can pick that energy from them, and then that lingers with you, and then you don't know why. And then you start developing that, and if you don't catch it, it might stick with you for a very long time. So it's always good to, you know, recognize where that energy is coming from, and just the feeling that you're getting. And if you don't like it, just forgive it and just, you know, let it go away.
Right.
Wash it away.
So to sum it up, since we're at the top of the hour, really, what is forgiveness? It's really just recognizing the emotion that bothers us, that keeps us from becoming a better person. Why do we need to do the forgiveness practice? Really is for our own spiritual growth, to enhance our life, because when we let go of all that emotions, then we become a better person. We become the light, we shine. So when we shine, our perspective in life is much better and happier. Our family appreciate us better. Our coworker enjoy being around us. So the relationship in all aspects gets better for us. As you can see, there's some tips that our group have been giving. Scott is great with EFT. If you do need to reach out to our group for the EFT modality technique, you can reach us at our website, and Scott will walk you through that. We also, like John said, practice just when you recognize the action that you did, immediately just apologize and do the forgiveness practice. You know, the more that we do it, the better we will become, because another person might not recognize what they did really affected you, but forgive them anyways, because that will help your soul. Like Jung said, you don't hold that grudges, you don't hold that emotions, which later will impact you. And then prayers, that's what I do. I pray every day and ask for forgiveness. You know, I would do it for myself, for my kids, for my ancestors, on behalf of our ancestors, and ask, date it back in our previous life, because there are times in this lifetime and in previous lifetime that we take actions that we don't even realize or remember that we have caused pain and suffering to other people. So by saying prayers every day, it actually helped. And I realized that by doing it, I noticed that life is actually more peaceful for me. And when it's more peaceful, then the people around me, the environment, everything just become more peaceful overall. So that's the cap of our today's forgiveness practice. Please do not forget to subscribe. We appreciate you becoming our fan, and subscribe and leave comments if you really find this tip helps, so that we can bring more topic to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Remember to let it go.